Okay, let's dive into this explainer and uncover the mystery of a microscopic killer that is quite literally hiding in plain sight within our own bodies. We usually think of deadly diseases as things we catch from the outside world, right? Like a passing cough or a contaminated surface. But today, we're looking at a pathogen that tells a very different and honestly a much more surprising story. We're exploring Streptococcus pneumoniae.
So here's the big question. How does a bacteria that we live with peacefully every single day suddenly transform into a lethal pathogen responsible for severe pneumonia and meningitis? It's kind of like a biological mystery of epic proportions. To understand how it causes so much devastation, we actually have to start by looking at its peaceful origins.
Section 1. Meet the harmless colonizer. Let's get to know the good guys first.
The crucial point here is that these benign microbes actually exist to our benefit. We've got tons of Streptococcus species in our throats that are absolutely supposed to be there. Now, if you take these friendly microbes and grow them in a lab on plates containing blood, they produce a substance that metabolizes hemoglobin. And what happens is, it creates this highly distinct, really beautiful green halo around the bacterial colonies. It's a phenomenon known as alpha hemolysis. Because of this green halo, these friendly microbes are commonly called strep viridans.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole Jekyll and Hyde dynamic we're talking about. See, long ago in evolutionary history, one of these benign green halo-producing colonizers started picking up new genes. It transformed. The difference is honestly stark. Your garden variety oral strep is harmless. It doesn't have a thick outer layer. But the newly evolved Streptococcus pneumonia, it acquired this super thick, gelatinous carbohydrate capsule. If you were to literally touch it in a lab, it feels exactly like slimy goo. And that capsule is the defining feature that turns Dr. Jekyll into Mr. Hyde.
Now, if you look at this new threat under a microscope, you're going to see a very signature shape. It doesn't look like your standard oral bacteria at all. It's what scientists call a lancet-shaped diplococcus. Diplo meaning two, so these cells almost always travel in pairs. And they're bound together by this straight, flat joint with somewhat pointed opposite ends. It kind of looks like two little spears glued together at the base.
Moving on to Section 2, the pathogen's deadly arsenal. Let's see what this thing is packing.
Remember that slimy carbohydrate capsule we just talked about? Well, it acts like a literal suit of armor. When our immune system's frontline soldiers, the neutrophils, try to engulf and destroy the bacteria, they literally just bounce right off. They skip away. But that is not even the most bizarre behavior. Older pneumococcus cells actually do this thing called autolysis. Basically, they kill themselves. And when they break apart, the center of the bacterial colony collapses, leaving this distinct crater-like footprint that looks almost like a tiny little volcano. But having armor and a weird self-destruct button isn't enough to cause severe disease. This bacteria also wields a stolen genetic weapon called pneumolysin. It's a highly potent protein toxin. And scientists actually believe it was likely lifted from a totally different gangrene-causing microbe way back in the distant past. It's an incredibly complex, highly engineered toxin made up of 4 distinct sections, which turns our once benign oral resident into a heavily armed threat.
Let's break down how this stolen weapon executes a devastating 4-step attack. First up, one section of the pneumolysin toxin acts like an anchor, and it binds directly to the cholesterol in our human cell membranes. Once it's attached, step 2 kicks in. It acts like a drill, literally boring physical pores or holes into our cells, which causes our vital fluids to leak out. Then for step 3, it goes after the cell's powerhouses, the mitochondria, triggering our cells to self-destruct. And finally, step 4, this leaves behind a red-hot mass of dead tissue that attracts massive, highly damaging inflammation.
Depending on where this cellular destruction takes place, the results are just devastating. If the bacteria brings this pneumolysin weapon into the lungs, fluid seeps in and you get severe pneumonia. If it manages to enter the bloodstream and attaches to the lining of the central nervous system, it bores into the meninges, causing deadly meningitis. And if it happens to travel up from the throat into the middle ear, it causes otitis media, which are those super painful ear infections that are just so common in kids.
All right, Section 3, Chaos and the Opportunists. This is where things get a bit unsettling.
You see, incredibly, we don't catch Streptococcus pneumoniae like we catch a cold or the flu from passing contact. We actually harbor these strains peacefully right in our pharynx, our throats, for our entire lives. We're constantly cycling different strains of this heavily armed bacteria in and out of our microbiomes, and usually we never even get sick.
As one researcher perfectly put it, what turns the organism into a holy terror is a precipitating event that upsets the dynamic of peaceful colonization. The bacteria is honestly just waiting there. It needs a distraction, some kind of disruption in our body's normal operations to transform from a peaceful, quiet neighbor into an aggressive, tissue-destroying invader.
Usually, that precipitating event is something as incredibly common as a viral infection. When a virus hits us, it throws our normally stable upper respiratory tract into absolute chaos. Our human cells basically panic. They start sending out these chemical distress signals called cytokines. They alter their surface molecules. Massive inflammation kicks off, and our normal, robust host defenses are suddenly compromised and completely distracted by the virus.
And it's precisely into this fiery, inflamed chaos that the pneumococcus pounces. It is the ultimate opportunist. Taking full advantage of the viral distraction, it leaves its peaceful home in the throat. It invades the inflamed lungs, ascends the eustachian tube to the ear, breaches the defenses to enter the bloodstream, or colonizes the sinuses and the meninges. It literally uses our vulnerability to strike.
So, Section 4, building our defenses. Let's talk about how we fight back.
The bacteria's slimy carbohydrate armor presents a massive problem for our immune systems. See, carbohydrates are what we call poor antigens. They just do not trigger a strong, lasting immune response the way proteins do. Babies and very young children make almost zero antibodies to carbohydrates at all, which leaves them incredibly vulnerable. And even in healthy adults, our defenses against these capsules just naturally fade away after a few years.
To make matters significantly worse, think about the number 90. There aren't just one or two types of pneumococcus out there. There are around 90 different types based on the specific content of their carbohydrate capsules. Because of this massive variety, creating a single universal vaccine to wipe this bacteria out entirely is just biologically impossible.
But human ingenuity is pretty remarkable. The brilliant workaround scientists developed is a process called conjugation. Since our bodies basically ignore the weak carbohydrate capsule, scientists physically attach it to a strong, highly recognizable protein. Specifically, they use CRM197, which is a completely harmless, non-toxic version of the diphtheria toxin. By essentially disguising the bacterial slime as a dangerous protein, it tricks our immune system. It triggers a vigorous, long-lasting defense from both our T cells and B cells.
This elegant solution led to the creation of two distinct weapons of our own. First, we have PCV, the conjugated vaccine that uses that clever protein carrier. Because it forces such a strong immune response, it's highly effective for babies and young children who otherwise just couldn't fight the bacteria. Then on the other side, we have PPSV, which is a pure polysaccharide or carbohydrate vaccine. This formulation skips the protein carrier and is specifically tailored to boost the immunity of vulnerable adults over 65 or folks with compromising medical conditions.
Now, it's really important to understand the main takeaway here. While these vaccines can't cover all 90 strains floating around out there, they are strategically designed to target the absolute most common and virulent ones. And by deploying these vaccines to our most vulnerable populations, we have successfully blunted the severity and the sheer number of these devastating infections all over the world.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a fascinating, maybe slightly eerie question. We are ecosystems, right? We're basically walking, talking habitats for trillions of microbes. The next time you get a simple cold or a minor viral infection, will you wonder about the delicate balance of your own microbiome? Will you think about the microscopic opportunists, heavily armed and patiently waiting, living right under your nose? Thanks for exploring this with us today, and keep asking questions about the incredible biology happening inside of you right now.